Going through the math 10 checkpoints. So this is about trigonometry, to trigonometric ratio. So let's get started. The first question is find the value of x. You already know how to do this from grade 8 mathematics, so that should be easy. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the formula that is needed to solve for the unknown side of the triangle, which is the Pythagorean theorem. So I know that a is going to be 10 squared, and b is x squared, and c is 13 squared. That's 100 plus x squared equals 169. X squared is going to be, if I do minus 100 on both sides, it's going to be 69, and x is going to be equals to square root of 69. I think that answer is better than using the calculator to approximate the value, so that's good enough. First question done. Let's move on to the second question. Similar things, I'm going to write down the formula first. And then let's type in all the numbers that I know of. 8 squared and 4 squared 3 squared equals c squared. And notice that I decided to put the bracket around the 8 and the 4 squared 3. I do that because I want to protect that numbers. And if I don't do the brackets around that, a lot of people will be confused with how to do the 4 squared 3 squared. So, well, first 8 squared is 64, that's easy, but then what about 4 squared 3 squared? We can either use the exponent law in this case, which means that we're going to do 4 squared times square root 3 squared equals c squared. Here I'm using the fact that ab squared is equal to a squared b squared. Or you can just plug 4 square root 3 into the calculator, and then you can square that, and you'll probably notice that you get 64 plus 16 times 3 is going to be 48. So what is 64 plus 48? That's 112 equals c squared. So c is equal to square root of 112. Now, if you really care about making this better, you can try to simplify this. You're not expected to know how to simplify radicals yet, but if you really wanted to, my thing squared of 112 can be divided into 112 divided by 4 is 28, and 112 divided by 16 is equal to 7. So that's 16 times 7, so that's 4 square root 7. I will accept both answers. So either c is square root of 112 or c is 4 square root 7. Either is fine. Sorry, centimeters. I forgot centimeters in both cases. My bad on that. There you go. First row finished. Let's move on to the second row. First question, identify the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse sides relative to theta. That's probably simple. Let's start with the opposite. The opposite side of a specific angle is literally the opposite side. So that's going to be 3 centimeters. And the adjacent side is the side that is next to the theta, that is not hypotenuse. So that's 4 centimeters. And finally, the hypotenuse is simply the longest side of the triangle. So the hypotenuse is 5 centimeters. Hopefully that's super easy for everyone. Let's move on to the second question. Find the sine ratio of theta. So first thing I need to know is using the mnemonic, the SOHCAHTOA. So obviously we're looking for sine, so that's the SOH. So what does the acronym SOH mean? Well, it means that we're looking for the sine of theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. In other words, I need to know the length of my opposite side of this triangle. Now, do I know the opposite side of this triangle? Well, I know that h, the hypotenuse, is 7. I know that a, the adjacent, is 5, but I do not know the opposite side. So what do? I need to find the length of the opposite side. So let's do it first. I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. 5 squared plus x squared is equal to 7 squared. 25 plus x squared equals 49. X squared equals 24 after I do minus 25 on both sides. And then I square root both sides to get x equals square root of 24. So I know that my opposite side is equal to square root of 24. Now the rest of the question is very simple. Because I know that my sine of theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, how long is my opposite side? Well, it's square root of 24. How long is my hypotenuse side? It's 7. So that's my final answer. Sine theta is equal to square root of 24 equals over 7. Or, of course, if you're a tryhard, you can also write square root of 24 as 2 square root of 6. But, that's only for tryhard people. I'll accept both answers. What I really want to make sure that everyone does it correctly is that you need to say sine of theta equals something. If you ever write sine equals something, that's actively incorrect. And I tell you right now, so I'm not going to mark it silly mistake. I'm going to actively mark incorrect if you say sine equals square root of 24 over 7. Okay, that is actively incorrect. Okay, you must write sine of theta equals something. Are we okay with that? Sine of theta equals something. Okay, the reason being, if you don't include the theta, then we don't know which angle you're coming from, and all three trig ratios are dependent on which side you're looking from. Okay, so that's why you need to include the theta. Let's do the last question. This is the advanced level question, so hold your seatbelt. Let's find the tangent ratio of theta. So first thing, let's do the same SOHCAHTOA. And because we're looking for the tangent ratio, we know that we're looking at the last one, the TOA. What does the TOA stand for? It means that we're looking at tangent theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. TOA. Tangent theta is equal to opposite over adjacent, which means I need to know the length of the opposite side and the length of the adjacent side. Well, let's identify the sides according to the theta in this triangle. Well, first off, I know that the longest side is going to be the hypotenuse. I also know that the opposite of theta is going to be 2 squared 5. So all O is 2 squared 5. And what about the adjacent? Do I know the adjacent side? I don't know. So my goal is to find the adjacent side. So let's find the adjacent side. How do I find the adjacent side? How do I find the unknown side of a right angle triangle? I need to use the Pythagorean theorem. A, let's call it x squared. B is going to be 2 squared 5 bracket around squared equals C, which is 4 squared 3 bracket around squared. So once again, let's use the distribution law. I'm going to distribute 2 into square into 2 and squared 5. So that's 2 squared times squared 5 squared equals 4 squared times squared 3 squared. Another distribution on the right hand side. So that's x squared plus 4 times 5 is 20. And 16 times 3 is what? 48. So then x squared is equal to minus 20 on both sides. And that's going to be 28. So x is equal to square root of 28. And of course, once again, if you're a tryhard, you can make that as 2 squared 7. Not needed right now. So anyways, I know my adjacent is square root of 28. So I think the question is almost solved. Tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent. How long is the opposite side? My opposite side is 2 squared 5. How long is my adjacent side? It's square root of 28. And there you go, and that's my final answer. Tangent theta is equal to 2 squared 5 over square root of 28. And of course, once again, if you're a super tryhard, you can make this as 2 squared 5 over 2 squared 7, which means tangent theta is equal to, simplify it, square root 5 over 7. That's only for nerdy people. You don't have to write this tangent theta as square root 5 over 7. Later, you'll learn how to simplify the radicals. Not expected right now. Once again, what I do expect you to do is to write tangent of theta. Okay? If you write tangent equals something, that's actively incorrect. I'll say that one more time because it's quite important. You must write tangent of theta equals, not tangent equals 2 squared 5 over squared 28. Okay, that's incorrect. Also, another thing, if some of you have decided to use your calculator and it's square root of 28, and let's say you approximate it into 5.29, well, you're okay. I'm not going to say that it's incorrect to say tangent of theta. Actually, I write that on the bottom. It's okay to say tangent of theta is equal to 2 squared 5 over 5.29. However, if you are going to write this as 5.29, then you're not allowed to use the equal sign. What are you allowed to use instead of equal sign? You're allowed to use approximately equal to symbol, which is a scribbly equal sign. Okay, just a note here. Here, scribbly equal to, which means approximately equal to. Okay, so I'll accept that answer as well, as long as you use that notation properly. If you say tangent of theta is equal to 2 squared root of 5 over 5.29, I will actively mark it incorrect. Okay? That's why I suggest leave it as exact values as much as possible. You want to get exact values. Alright, so that summarizes the explanation of the mathematics 10 checkpoint on the trigonometric ratios.